potential is an entrepreneurial mindset. I like to say it's mission granted. No one is successful overnight.
Keep on keeping on.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to 31 Days to PADITU with me, Sean Griffin. Thanks for being here. And we have been putting a dent in the universe for 13 days now. Today is our 14th day, and it's a big one. We're now broadcasting live on YouTube, soon to be LinkedIn. Thank you, Amy Campbell, for all your efforts to make that happen. I'd also like to give a shout out to our watch groups in Vietnam, Kenya, Zambia, Uganda, Silicon Valley, New York, and Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Can't forget Atlanta. All right, everybody. You know, yesterday I had a coaching session with one of my coaches, Bill Handy. Unfortunately, this show takes place right when he has another coaching session. So we're going to try to figure out a way to meet Bill. But he has been incredible in my life to help me having tremendous breakthroughs and new awareness to things that are holding me back. And I intentionally scheduled him on the 13th so that I'd have some time to work on 31 Days to PADITU to get some sense of what I might want to focus in terms of the coaching session. And what happened during that coaching session is it reminded me that maybe people don't know how to identify coaches. Where do I find a coach? Where do I find a mentor? And mentors and coaches are different. My mentors are more long-term. So I guess I would say Bill is more of a mentor, but he does coach me and consult for me many times. And so let's talk about this for a minute, because I know many of you out there are looking for and thinking about, how do I find somebody to help advise me? How do I find a coach, a mentor who can help guide me forward? And so whenever I've been looking in the past when I'm looking for a coach, I've always put coach in the center. As you know, I'm a mind mapper, so coach. And I'm looking now, where am I going to find a coach? And what I first do is I look at family, right? My mother's on the show every Sunday, Insights with Sean's mom. She's a coach for me. My dad's also a coach. So family, parents. Now, my only caveat here is that sometimes parents and sometimes family members are not the most positive. So if you don't have a positive family, or if they're not really coaching worthy, you want to look other family members. Perhaps there's an uncle, an aunt who's somebody in your family. So family is a good first place to look. Then places of worship, right? Places of worship. There's always, wherever you worship, and there's always people within your congregation, within your family of people who show up to your place of worship. In there are really smart people who are participating in that community. Tap them, find them, ask them, see if they'll help you and become a coach and mentor. The other thing I do, and how I found Bill, is just through life. And I remember at the beginning, nothing of greatness happens without a team. If you take one thing away from the show, collect people. Constantly be collecting people. So I collect people as I go through life. Wherever I go, wherever I am, and I find and identify somebody who has a unique characteristic or skill that can help me, but also in some way help them, then I collect them and I leverage them. And then if I'm in a predicament or a pickle, I will ask for some coaching or advice. Based upon success and the relationship growing, I may move into a more longer-term coaching relationship. But collecting people as coaches as you go through life and asking them, would you be willing to be my coach? Would you be willing to help me address this challenge? Ask for half-hour, 30-minute chunks of time. Less time, less stress for the people you're trying to collect. And then finally, you're sure to find people who would be great coaches. I know that I'm asked to be a coach constantly, almost every day, for people, for businesses, for life improvement, personal improvement. Ask for referrals, right? Ask them for referrals. So if they're busy and don't have the time to do that, ask them if they know somebody like themselves or somebody who might have the time or capacity to be able to help you with your coaching. In the end, everybody I know has networks that they can identify and find people to help them be coaches. And so I just encourage you, again, to identify key family members That may change over time, but family members who can be coaches, who have really good knowledge and experience, collecting people you meet along the way, asking them to be coaches. Places of worship are a prime location for people to identify talent and people to ask for coaching and mentoring, and then referrals for those people you ask and who are unable to help you. So those are my tips on how to identify a coach or a mentor that can help you more intimately and more personally advance your business endeavor or personal improvement forward. Amy, who's our first guest? Is it pronounced Thu? Oh, you're on mute. You're muted. Is there a way I can? Maybe I can unmute you. Oh, that's the wrong person. She's not. Oh, Esther.
Hey, Sean.
That was confusing.
I wasn't expecting that.
Wow,
I'm good. How are you?
How are you, Esther?
I'm fantastic.
I'm so glad to hear that. You're looking fabulous too. I'm liking
Thank
your new
you.
hairdo. This is really
Yeah,
great.
yeah. You know, we can't go to the salon. We can't go get our hair done. So
Believe
we
me,
have to
I'm
get
glued.
creative.
My hair is glued down.
Yeah.
What? So Esther's in Nairobi, Kenya. Esther runs as an executive director for the We Create Women's Entrepreneurship Center, which is an incubator accelerator. But you're also involved in other activities to support underserved within Kenya. What's happening in your world?
Wow. So we have a lot going on. In
Yeah.
addition to COVID, which has affected the entire world, we are having very, very heavy rains. So it's flooding. We actually have more deaths resulting from flooding than we have from COVID. So it's a concern for us right now. We are just waiting to see how it's going to unfold. There's been a lot of organizations like the Red Cross and AMREF who are supporting those who are affected by floods, because a number of people have gotten displaced as well. They've lost their homes. So it's a trying time for a lot of us. And also the fact that we can't have meetings means it becomes more challenging to support our entrepreneurs. So trying to become very creative and engage with our entrepreneurs online, and provide support for them in whichever way we can.
I mean, first of all, it seems like just a short time ago I was there in Nairobi, and it was raining a lot then, so it just hasn't let up, huh?
It did, and the rains are not, I mean, it's heavy in Nairobi, but the most affected part of the country is the western region. So where towards Lake Victoria, it rains very, very heavily there. There's history of floods in those areas. And this time, I think everything just seems to have compounded with the pandemic. And so the rain is a lot worse. A lot of people have gotten displaced. And we keep praying for them and hoping for the best. Hopefully it's going to stop raining, but we don't see like it, maybe another 2 weeks or so of heavy rains for us.
It's not typically the rain season, though, is it?
No, it's not. We expected the rains to have ended by March, early April. So this is a bit late in our season for rain.
I mean, one of the things that has become abundantly clear to me is that when you live in a city like Washington, D.C., where I'm broadcasting and living right now, you don't feel or experience climate change in the same way as you do, for instance, in Africa and different parts of Africa, and where it actually has a more direct impact. And one of the things that I guess my question is like, this is the climate change that you're experiencing is not just killing people or flooding. It's also destroying their ability to create livelihood because they can't grow their crops because there's no predictability of the crops, and the crops are now washed away because of the floods. And so what's happening to address the realities of climate change, which is like, for me, Africa looks like the canary in the coal mine when it comes to this climate change, which I've felt personally when in Africa. I'll stop there.
Yeah. So yes, for sure you do. We do see and feel the impact of climate change. So it works part of the area that has been affected, yes, it has affected their ability to grow crops and to also sustain their livelihoods. But on the other hand, there are other sides, there are other parts of Kenya which are thriving because now the rains are really good. So we are still able to grow crops. And we get a lot of support also from our neighbors in East Africa. So we import food from like Tanzania and Uganda. So there's that very good East Africa community that allows us to import and support each other across the region. But there also, what I've noticed is a lot of young people are getting involved in the conversations around climate change and coming up with campaigns to not just bring awareness on what is happening on our continent, but at the same time offer solutions, innovative solutions around how to mitigate climate change in Africa. I know a friend of mine who has set up an entire organization around climate change and is encouraging people, like right now because it's raining, he's training people on how to grow food. So how do you grow food in your small compound, even if you don't have a large garden, maybe you just have a small space, how do we assist you to grow food in that small space? Encouraging people to also grow native trees and fruit trees. So there are a lot of initiatives and conversations that are going on in Africa around climate change, and it's very encouraging to see that young people are getting involved in in that conversation and trying to be the change.
This is great news. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that you don't see, I think, and you don't feel it if you're not in an environment where it really does have a tremendous impact. And so, and you see the
Yeah.
change and it's great to see. I mean, Kenyans are resilient people, determined people, strong. What is it that you think it creates that strength inside Kenyans? What is it? I asked this question yesterday of Carlos Moreno, who's here, and there are citizens who grow up in an area called Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, African Americans, by the way, and they have this resilience and drive that's different than a lot of people. And I'm wondering what you might credit some of that drive and grit that you have in Kenya that it causes Kenyans to go above and beyond many times.
Wow, that's an interesting question. I never really thought about it, but I do know what normally comes out is that out of the East African community, we are seen to be very resilient and we hustle a lot. So I think maybe it's a culture that has made us be that way, and this is just an assumption, that we're always trying to grow and improve what we know. We've always had this, everyone has this vision of what their life is supposed to be. So we're always fighting for better opportunities. We're always looking for ways to improve ourselves. We're very, very competitive. So in and the funniest thing is every single time I've traveled, every single country that I have landed in, I have found a Kenyan. I've seen a Kenyan. And the easiest way to identify us is through our bands, our Kenyan band. Yeah, so it's so easy to. So every time I'm traveling, I'm always looking out for the Kenyan band, and you'll see Kenyans everywhere. So we are just driven, and I think it's a mix of culture, education, that has brought us to where we are. I don't. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I've just noticed Zambians also similar.
Yeah.
But maybe not as like, and then you got Nigerians, and everybody's got a different culture. Let me ask you a question about one of the things that stands out, and that I'm just curious about.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this before, but maybe it's been a long time, so maybe we got a whole different perspective here, and that is trust. I grew up in Silicon Valley. You just trust. It's just natural.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I trust everybody, and they say they can do it. I do it. I'm just, my mindset is I trust.
Yeah.
Kenyans were the first people I met who literally don't trust to start. Like it takes, and I know there's some people that we've worked with who they still probably don't believe me when I say my goal is to see you succeed. That's it. That's my only goal here. And what do you think that's about? Trust. Like how can Kenyans become more trustworthy faster? Because it holds them back. It holds anybody back who doesn't trust at that level, because they're not able to move forward effectively. And I just wonder what your thoughts are around this.
Well, I would say a lot of it is built from right from the colonial period. So, because our cultures are very collaborative. So, I mean, when I look at all Kenyan tribes and cultures, we're very collaborative. We're all about the community and helping each other. But then you have this imperialists who come in and say we need to divide and rule. So we were classified now in tribes in terms of locations of where we were, and then you had to fight to now gain trust. So there are those who fought to gain the trust of the imperialists and be ahead of everyone else. And then there were those now who are trying to fight for our independence. And a lot of that was carried forward after independence, because then you found those who fought for our independence in the forest came out feeling those who helped us attain independence, part of them did not fulfill all the needs that were required for us to gain independence. So they felt a lot of their issues had not yet been addressed. And if this continues, and this was a trend that continued, because then everyone who's coming into the government, anyone who's coming into any form of civil service, they're coming with that mistrust of, are you for me? Are you supporting me and supporting my ideas and my vision, or is it all about you? So I think that part of it plays a role, that we grew up in that mistrust culture, and then we had a period of political unrest, if I can call it, where we had a single party, and the president was all about his word, ultimate power, if I can call it that, and he was a dictator at that time. And so you also have now more mistrust being created in the country, where you don't know who you're speaking to, you're afraid to talk, you're afraid to be vocal about your opinions, because of the impact it will have on your family, on your job. And so that has carried forward, and it's going to take time for us to unlearn and create new trust values, because people still hold on to that. So it's our generation now that's starting to say, you know what, we're not divided by, my tribe does not matter when I'm working or if I'm interacting with you. I trust you as a person. I want to know you as a person and start building that trust. So we are the generation to make that change happen. But I do think it's going to take some time before we see that major change that we expect.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, there were literally millions of Africans that were shipped out of the coastal area of Kenya, right? It was one of the major shipping for slaves. And so,
well, yes, towards the eastern side, because we are on the East Coast. We did have slaves who were shipped out to the East Coast. And I know I know there are Kenyans who also fought in some of the world wars. So there are a lot of issues that, of course, will play in our trusting everyone who comes. So that we'll always have that. It will take time for us to get over it and say, I can trust. If I say something, then I actually mean it, without seeing like there could be a hidden meaning behind any conversation we're having.
I brought it up because trust is one of the critical components to being able to move forward, right? There's a lot of people unstuck right now. Part of their fear may be lack of trust in themselves or in others, whatever it may be. And I bring it up only because it's such, and for everybody out there, trust is one of those things that the more you can trust, the farther you'll go. This doesn't mean everybody's trustworthy, because not everybody is, and most people aren't. But it doesn't mean that I don't trust them first. I trust them. When they prove they're not trustworthy, then I move away. So it's a different approach. And I just wanted to highlight it because it still remains something in my head that I wonder, and I want to go back and see if we can do some experiments and see if we can shift up some of that more intentionally around trust. Yeah. Our short time is running out, Esther, on the live show. I'm sad because we could probably do the whole show together. I have a lot more questions.
I know.
but I want to ask you this question before we go. Like, when you're stuck in life, what can you do to get unstuck?
So when I'm stuck, the one thing I think of, I have this quote that I love about the context is about it's not the person outside that matters, it's the person in the ring. I forget. I need to refer to it and read it. I'll look for it. But it's about actually I have it. Let me just open
Go
it.
get it, please. We gotta have it. You tease us. No, we gotta know.
Quite long though.
So you read this to yourself. You read this to yourself like an affirmation?
Yes,
Got
I
it.
do. And I have it, it's the
Let's
first
do it.
page
Let's hear it.
of my notebooks. So
Let's
it
hear
says, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who comes short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deed, who knows great enthusiasm and great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy case, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement. So I think that's the one thing that I keep telling myself. So it's not about who's I'm criticizing myself. It's just about being in the ring. Whatever small movement I'm making is going to make a difference. I may not be seeing it right now, but in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, in a year, I will see the difference, and it will be worth all the blood, sweat, and tears.
It's beautiful, Esther. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful affirmation quote. I think that I saw it. That's a Roosevelt quote?
Yeah, a Roosevelt quote.
Teddy Roosevelt?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
The bully. That's what he was saying.
Well, but he had very wise words for us.
Well, he does. There's an island here in DC called Roosevelt Island. Next time you're here, we're going to go to that island. It's beautiful memorial to Roosevelt, and I believe that quote is etched into a wall. So,
oh, okay.
It's one of.
I'd love to see that.
It's a great place to go, hang out. Yeah, you'd love it. So, thank you, Esther. I really appreciate it. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Keep on PADITUing.
Yes, I will.
Good. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Thank you. Boy, great to see Esther. Yeah, resilience and trust, everyone. Resilience, it's a muscle. You gotta keep, exercising, and then trust. I can't tell you enough, and I know people are in different environments, but trusting, it's one of the keys, it's one of the most important facts and keys to Silicon Valley's success is that people trust everybody, and I can meet somebody and they can say, I'm starting a business, and all of a sudden I'm now a co-founder in that business. That happened within a 1 to 2 hour range right there I'm talking about. And then when one of us doesn't perform, it's okay. They leave, and then we find somebody else. So it's not that people can't be trustworthy, that people aren't trustworthy. It's just that start with trust, start with yes, and move from there. Amy, who's next? Can you hear me? Two? Oh, I don't, you're muted somehow. There you are. Hello?
I'm in Hanoi now.
Good.
Hello, I'm in Hanoi, Vietnam. Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's very weak.
My Wi-Fi is really good here. Sorry.
That's okay. How about this? What? You're in Hanoi, you say?
Sorry, I can hear you very clear.
Yeah, you're in Hanoi. You make beautiful ceramics.
Oh yes, thank you for.
I see them behind you. What's your question?
As you know, we are a family who has been made handcrafted ceramics for nearly 50 years in Hanoi, and now we want to ask a question: how we can develop our sales channel for our ceramic artwork and decor. We have three artists in the family, and we want to use this for our work, to support our work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
I didn't catch all that. Not Amy, can you come in for a second?
Sorry?
1 second. Amy? I saw Amy.
Hi.
Hey. Hi. Well, I can hear you.
I have a think I have her question here. Can we
Yeah,
try putting it in
I couldn't hear it fully.
Okay, yeah, I think it's just difficult. Let me see if I can get it typed in here really quickly. And try this. Try this one. And
We are unscripted here. It is live,
Yeah.
and we are global. How can I develop a sales channel for our new ceramic artwork and decor? What's new? She's frozen, Amy. I think, Amy, let's move. Do we have another guest? I see somebody else. Hello, Seema.
Hello, Sean.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Been forever.
It's been a while. A minute since you've been on the line.
Everybody, if you don't know, this is my better half, Seema Patel, my wife, and she's also CEO of Global Knowledge Initiative, GKI, and they are solving and working on, her team are working on solving some of the biggest challenges in the world. Also, former head of innovation or lead of innovation at USAID, has a lot of insights and just, way smarter than me when it comes to understanding how to work in these super complex environments. What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
Well, I think we have for a long time been working in complex challenges, social impact challenges, and helping teams find ways to design solutions, innovate, collaborate, and learn in complex challenges. And what's new is that the world has just gotten so much more dynamic and complex with COVID. And it's exactly the time we need new ways of solving problems, and we need to find new opportunities for organizations that are working on social impact issues to move and act within this complexity, to see all the different dynamics that are happening and know how to make decisions within them. And so for me, what's new is like all the methodologies and approaches that we are applying around solving complex problems are so relevant, but they're also themselves not agile enough. Like, people need to figure out how to act now, and there's so much happening around them that they're trying to pivot towards and navigate. And we need to kind of make more simple the opportunities on how to think about the complexity and make decisions in them. And so we're taking all of our tools and methods and trying to find ways to break them up and put them online and, help teams take one step forward, as opposed to sort of having to take 3 months to analyze everything before coming up with their strategy. And that's a shift for us. It's moving more agile, and it's hard. It's really hard work to figure out how to help people exactly in the time they need in a way that is bite-sized enough that they can move forward with.
This is a constant theme we've been having on the show the last 13 days, 14, I guess, today. How to move. We're stuck. Too much overwhelmed by all the change or opportunity or whatever it may be. And you work in an environment that is a lot of academics, a lot of really, really smart people who have really tremendous strengths. But maybe one of their greatest weaknesses is taking action or being entrepreneurial. That's the thing I see. I say, everybody's got a lot of ideas, but then taking action and doing it. What are you doing to help people take action? What besides the tools and everything, what are you finding works to get people who may not have historically taken action quickly to take action now?
Well, I think we are capitalizing on the trust we've built. You talked a lot about building trust and trusted partnerships. And for our partners, international NGOs that we're working with, government that we're working with, projects that are doing complex social change work, the trust we've built over the years means that we're in accompaniment with them now. And so we're able to be in a position of coaching and advising in a way that feels really applied and practical, because it's in the moment. We're in accompaniment. Education Project is now trying to figure out how do we support education in Liberia virtually, it's a pivot for the project. They're used to working in person. And so being able to leverage those trusted relationships and be in a coaching as opposed to more traditional kind of consulting work where you have, time to do assessments and time to help develop strategies. This coaching methodologies, I mean, you're seeing it in action right now with what you're doing, right? The ability to help people with the questions they have on the top of their mind in the moments they need it, and give them that ear and that sort of fortitude to move forward, that inspiration to move forward in it. So I think that's one of it. The other is, there is things that are changing right now that are massive opportunities that people can take advantage of. And we are working with, while our field is academic and there is a lot of sort of trying to think about how do we bring theory into practice. So I work on complexity theory. There's a lot of academics on that, right? How complex are the systems that we operate in? And it becomes really hard to figure out how to take action in that. But we're also translating that for social enterprises that are entrepreneurial, that are operating with the mindset of agile design, listening to customer feedback, being able to, rapidly take decisions and move teams into a new way of working. And so we're trying to be that translation between the academic and the entrepreneurial rapid action that's needed in response to communities that are in need right now all over the globe, and that our partners are working with.
So you're bridging that gap. You're the one. You're helping bridge so that you're like the middle ground, helping each other understand each other, and then move forward with action. Because there's a lot of talking going on, right? A lot of talking, and then what can you do? What can GKI do?
But
what can you do to help people understand that they can experiment? Because these academics, they got mental blocks in their heads because they're afraid they might not look good enough, or it's not the way they've done it, or whatever it may be. But they have, I know it, I've seen it, have capacity to make real change if they can just come up with a way for it's safe for them to take a test, do a test, maybe more of an experiment, to take some action, see what happens, and it can drive some kind of momentum that could change their behavior long term. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in social complex problems, it's not all academics. It's people that are responding to communities in need, that are trying to support communities that are, struggling right now, struggling because they're not able to deliver the health services or the education services they've been used to delivering, to provide those kind of, capacity building and coaching opportunities for local entrepreneurs, for farmers, for people within the agriculture and food sector. I think what we're seeing more than anything is that there is an opportunity now, because people are having new insights about how rapidly the world can move in crisis. Right. And how to lead through crisis is one skill set that is inherent in everyone. I think there's an incredible amount of personal resilience that we as humans display when we are in crisis. And I disagree. I don't think there's only talking going on. There's an incredible amount of action right now, and it's moving so fast. It's almost hard to know where to move within that. People are banking differently, and all kinds of startups, social enterprises, nonprofits are trying to figure out how to shift their models to more of a digital space, to more of a virtual space, to deliver services with as little human contact as possible to keep their communities safe. There are new funding networks that have started up. The Rapid Response COVID Alliance is a representation of 30 organizations that have come together under the World Economic Forum to provide capital and liquidity into the nonprofit sector and the social enterprise sector that deeply needs it right now. So people move in crisis. And I think our challenge and the challenge of a lot of our partners is how to help them not miss those opportunities to shift and do something different. And I think that is a personal coaching, but it's also organizational culture. Mm-hmm. Building an organizational culture around agility and rapid decision-making. It's kind of things that I'm thinking about doing, and we're trying to shift into is, giving things away right now, right? This is not the time to say, we're going to wait for proposals or, long longer processes of decision making around funding that's common in our sector. What can we give away right now to be in service of organizations that are trying to adapt and change? And we've been giving away things like free design sprints. So 5 days, help your team understand and grapple with the changing dynamics in your ecosystem and come up with an action plan on how to move forward. And that's over 5 days, an hour a day, and teams can move forward with that kind of thing. Now, that was a paid service at GKI that we used to do over the course of many, many months. Now we're turning it into sprint. We're making it free. We're trying to figure out ways to really get visibility of how these tools and methods and our support can help.
Where can people find you? Like, what's your website address?
So it's globalknowledgeinitiative.org.
Okay.
And we have, we're, on LinkedIn. You can follow Global Knowledge Initiative as well as on Twitter. We have blogs on Medium as well. But those are all places where you can at least access us and follow us. And because we're deploying some more of these services rapidly, they're not on the website, they're on our social media, because that's where we're going to be able to get them in front of people that may.
They can find the social media links through the website though, right?
Yeah.
So let's switch to innovation. You are like a pioneer in challenges and produced some of the first challenges that, back in the early 2000, mid 2000s. And so talk to us about what you're seeing as it relates to innovation and new innovations that are out there that may be of interest to our audience.
Yeah, so I worked on designing a set of portfolio, like a set of programs that were meant to source and invest in innovations. I was doing this out of the federal government, so with USAID and with other partners that were working on development challenges. What we found is that there are incredible amounts of innovations out there, new technologies, different kinds of service models that can create more access to services that people need. What's interesting is that they're not being connected up. So to really see a shift in the way an entire system or communities operate, it's not the one-off product or the one-off technology or service model that's really going to change the outcomes and for our community.
Time out for a second. What types of innovation are you seeing? Can you name some types of innovation?
I mean, we're seeing new technologies for certainly. I mean, accessing and leveraging digital platforms and using big data and new ways to help decision making, both at like a farmer level all the way up to global level decisions. We're certainly seeing a number of new service models that are about reaching the last mile. What that means is making sure that the business services are actually getting outside of those that have the resources and have the income and are most connected. So getting services out to rural communities, to disadvantaged communities that don't often have access to those kind of products and services that make their lives better. We're seeing innovations in how we're collaborating. So innovations in how organizations are operating. There are more and more, multi-stakeholder partnerships and different types of alliances that have come together to figure out how do we bridge the divide between government, private sector, and the social sector? How do we get innovative finance in which we can, stack all these different types of resources in new ways so that we can then finance the broader changes we need? So we're seeing innovations and partnership and multi-stakeholder engagements and alliances as well. But I think the key thing here is innovation is not about what, it's about how we operate, right? What's our mindset around learning and trying and taking risks and doing experimentation? And so while the programs that we've designed and that, we've supported our partners, have invested in hundreds of innovations, thousands of innovations that all have the potential to create social impact, all of those need to scale up in complex systems. And that is where innovation is needed most, is how do you scale it up so that this innovation is widely accessible, is fit for purpose, is consumer oriented. And that means our innovators, our teams, entrepreneurial teams, that learning mindset needs to always be there, not just in the beginning of designing the product or service, but on how is it being deployed and how are they learning about scaling it in the ecosystems.
You've got something you call MEL within the industry, measuring, evaluation, learning. You started with being more agile, adaptive, more flexible, right? More open and learning. What advice would you give an innovator out there right now to be more successful at getting their innovation to grow, to scale? Like they've got an innovation, it's a good one. Yeah, they're bootstrapping, they're struggling. But what specifically advice would you give on the how that would help someone, wherever you want to imagine, to move that forward and stop focusing on the what and focus on the how? What does that look like for them?
Yeah. So it's always hard when you're in operation to kind of learn and evaluate yourself how you're doing. But I think it's that entrepreneur, from an enterprise perspective, what are the key indicators? What are your key KPIs around the impact you're having, around the growth you want to have, and around the process learning? So those are 3 areas that we like to see more focused on because they're learning in all 3 of them. How are we?
Especially those again. What are the 3? I caught one, but what are the 3 again?
So for social enterprise businesses that are trying to also have a social impact, what impact are you having? Mm-hmm. Right? How are you making people's lives better? What are those key performance indicators for your business? So how is your organizational thriving? And then the last one is, what are you learning? So process, what are you learning about how customers are reacting to your product? How are you learning about how your organization is responding? So process indicators.
The third one's in acting upon those learnings, right?
Well, all of it is acting. I mean, you want to look at the data in the lens of decision making, right? What information are you collecting that helps you make better decisions because you're hearing from your communities, your customers, as well as your own organizational learning and teams.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think that you have a lot of experience with these innovators and have seen the differences between innovators. What is a kind of characteristic you see in innovators who actually successfully move and scale? Invent an innovation, grow it, and then scale it. What's a common kind of characteristic of an innovator that can take it all the way, grab that golden ring?
Well, I think a couple things. And we've worked with innovators within institutions and also out there, kind of entrepreneurial mindset. And I think it's often the same stuff, right? And you're talking about it all here on this show, which is, fortitude, real fortitude to be able to move through all the barriers and challenges that they're going to be facing along the way, building teams, right? Mobilizing their coalitions of the willing and being able to sort of inspire and build teams, often without all the resources available, right? So building teams based off of a vision of change that you can mobilize people around. The other, I think, is really about, not being able to, being fearless, like not being able to let things stop you and being fearless in terms of trying new things, taking some action, learning quickly. Those are some pretty common, I think, foundations for anyone that's trying to innovate in a complex system. Is surround yourself with good people, be brave. Be brave.
Well, we had Mortaza here a few days ago, and one of the things he said when I asked him a similar question was that he believes he can do anything, and so for him anything's possible, and that's his starting point. And that he'll find a way to make it work if he really wants to do it. I mean, he has to be driven to do it. And
I think one of the things.
Do you think you can teach people how to be more action-oriented, fearless? Can it be taught?
I think it can be taught. I think people can change. And I think the thing that we've honed in on is that moment of change is usually an experience. So what we think about at GKI is how do you create an experience that allows people to have a transformative moment, right? That to either be inspired by what they see, what they are hearing, what they are feeling, kind of connecting up to that spirit and heart. Through experiences, people can change and learn how to take that experience and then apply it in their lives. And so experiential learning is really, really critical. If we think about teaching as rote, do this, do that, which a lot of, unfortunately, our teaching models, our education models are one way, and they're not really about connecting often with the heart and the spirit. They tend to live up in the mind, intellectual teaching, skills building. But if we connect with all three and sort of figure out what are those experiences and design those experiences to help people shift, I think there's massive potential in everybody. I think anyone can learn how to be more effective in complexity and be more innovative as a leader or a practitioner. And we got to kind of pull that out of people.
So right now is one of those miraculous moments in life where on a global level, people can change now because there's an experience that we're having, a shared experience of hardship and difficulty, some on different levels and extremes. But now's one of those moments.
And people are motivated, right? So if you have the motivation, the opportunity, and the skills to shift, you will shift. And I think people are really, many people are motivated to act differently, to connect differently, to find new ideas, to transform. And the amount of self-organized action that's going on across the globe right now, I think is a really optimistic sign of how people can move into new ways that are positive in times of crisis.
I've always said there's really only like two ways to change. One, life-altering experience, something that just rocks you. Your mother dies, or somebody, and I've seen it, like it just changes people sometimes. Second is a life-altering experience. And what you're trying to say, I hear you saying, is designing life-altering experiences that then are not just occur naturally, organically. It's more of a designed experience to create change.
That's right. I mean, think about so many people that have entered social impact work because they've had some experience. We've talked to systems leaders, kind of innovation leaders that want to dedicate their life to solving a social problem that affects people and society or planet. And all of them have some story or some set of stories in which they made the decision to dedicate their life to service in some way. For some, it might have been Peace Corps or travel or an experience where they saw a deep inequity that they just could not live with anymore. And then they shift into, a mindset of service around a problem, solving a problem worth solving. And I think you can engineer those, and organizations that want to inspire leaders of our future, they want to create a movement of leaders that want to see a better planet, see, better outcomes for all, see equity baked into the way we and our institutions operate, should be thinking actively about how do we foster those experiences and how do we foster the generation to come to have those experiences early so that they can dedicate their life to a mindset around putting all their skills and talents and passions to solving problems that we need to solve in this world today.
I mean, we were in crisis before, right? We have a whole bunch of messes, and messes are different than problems because they're a bunch of interconnected challenges that make it more complex. So they were messes before, pre-COVID, but now, in some maybe we're in crisis, but now it looks like, it appears, even the way food's being distributed, our healthcare, all of it, that all of our systems are in crisis. Can you talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, I think we're seeing the deep, vulnerabilities. We've built systems, where our health system, our food system, our economic system, where there is a competitive game, where there is inequity, some have access, some don't, and where, we have still colonial mindsets, as Esther was talking about, all across the world. We have, these values that these mental models, these biases, these values that underpin what we have designed. And we've designed our organizations. We've designed these systems as humans, right?
Yeah,
in somehow creating the systems that we've designed. And I think this crisis is showing all those deep vulnerabilities because it it increases the gap. Some people are going to suffer more than others in this experience. And I think what's unique about COVID is that it's something that everyone is experiencing in some way. Everyone's going to be touched by this, right? If there is a massive flood in Bangladesh, that might impact some communities within Bangladesh, but it doesn't impact all of us.
Yeah.
We may pay attention for a day and then we move on. We may not even know what's happening, but somehow, and somehow that helps us kind of ignore, right? Not see the urgency, not be touched by it, by what other people are experiencing. Even in our own neighborhoods and communities, we have haves and have nots. And how much do we engage in solving that problem on a day? We'd be overwhelmed. But what's different is right now, everyone is being touched by this, and it's creating a very shared experience globally. And I think that that's an opportunity for shared connection then globally. Wow, how vulnerable are we? If this pandemic is not managed in one place, it's going to impact every place, right? And that's the first time I think we've had that kind of sense that this is a global challenge, and therefore a global response is needed. And I think our opportunity is, how do we build back systems better? How do we not just let this sort of, how do we take this moment and really think about what's underlying why we're so vulnerable right now? What are the underlying issues, and put those out on the table and talk deeply about our values in the systems, and start to think about, what does the world look like if we've just designed it to have different values at the heart? You've heard me say bringing in the feminine, right, into the way we've designed our systems. Connection, collaboration, and
we've been bringing it up here, right? That the 3 countries that appear to be managing this the best are all run by women. So women leaders are something, of course, that would be great to have more of. And we, how do we create more of that? And how do we get that feminine influence more balancing the current realities? Obviously, a very masculine world we live in. Even the work I've done with Esther, we have focused on how to intentionally integrate a more feminine approach into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, so that there's that influence. So it's not all men, the only ones moving things forward. So I think that's critical. What advice do you have for women? So you, as a CEO, you're in a very small group of women who reach that point. Congratulations, well earned. What advice do you have for other women who are listening, who are tuning in, on how they can go about moving closer to their full potential in a way that you've done?
It's a great question. I haven't had a chance to reflect on that much, but I think we're powerful leaders. And so, my experience is the more you bring your whole of self, right? Bring your whole self into your work, into your leadership style. Don't be afraid to connect with your feminine, because I think a lot of women are advised to get, to lead, that they have to take on some of those masculine qualities, that they have to lead like men. And I think we need to lead like women, and and use that full potential of our feminine in that. And, for me, that means connecting with teams, not being afraid of our emotional sort of way of leading, because I think people are attracted to heart that we bring into our organizational cultures. Don't let anyone tell you can't. I mean, that's just a common one. There are going to be people around, I think, leaders always that aren't supportive of the success that you might have or the growth that you might create. And I think, just block those out and focus on the people that you are surrounded by that make you full and whole, and do that for others.
Beautiful and inspiring. You make me think of something, and just as a human, I have a strong feminine side as a man, right? I'm still a man, and there's no question. But I have a strong feminine side. You, as a woman, have a strong masculine side.
Mhm.
Talk to us about how you balance that, because you come across more masculine, and is that a competitive advantage for you that you haven't really thought about as we're talking right now?
It's possible. I just, our relationship, we've talked about that I'm more of the masculine, you're more of the feminine, and we're a really good balance for each other that way.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can. I have an attitude that sort of shows up as, don't tell me what to do. We're going to move forward, and it's all in service of solving really important problems in the world, right? And I think that strength can be a real, can be a good tactic to apply sometimes, but sometimes it also doesn't resonate. What I find myself doing is I've surrounded myself with a lot of, supportive, caring team members that bring that sort of bring what I don't always display, and make sure that it's always a team approach to how we're taking the organization forward, because it's not just the leader, it's everyone, and that balance is important. But yeah, I wonder as well whether
it's just something to really think about here, because I think that my feminine side is a competitive advantage, because I can facilitate better because of it. I'm more empathetic. There's just a number of benefits I think that come from it, and I then sometimes have to intentionally move to a more masculine side or a more masculine approach in certain environments. And so it's been a learning process over life, and I'll probably learn till the end. But I think that it is a competitive advantage for you, because you have a fearlessness that isn't displayed as a feminine trait. It's displayed as just you as Seema, unstoppable, right? And that comes from somewhere inside of you, and you've got this balance. And I think it's something that it's not just the feminine side. So when I used to teach this with a bunch of other folks in California, we would teach women to tap their more feminine side, and men to tap more masculine side, and men to tap the more feminine, because there's already a feminine side in there, and so that the masculine side gives them and a woman gives them a little more balance and structure to move forward, where most men are missing a feminine side. So.
But I think, Sean, there's two things around this. Like we may lean one way or lean the other way in sort of a natural state. And I think, for anyone leader that's done any assessments of themselves, we all have these different frameworks to try to have self-awareness of who we are. But there is the learning and the, experience that people can bring and continue to harness around what is the context and within which I'm working, and what's going to make what can I bring that's going to help that context be most successful in that context, right? So if the context is, I did training for military officers that were working in Afghanistan. I was a pre-deployment training.
In Afghanistan.
I was in Afghanistan as well, but this was training military to know how to work within the social communities in Afghanistan. And so I was bringing training, and that context required me to take a very different approach. The first day I showed up, soft and, what I thought was myself and authentic in that moment. And I didn't get a hoorah. The second day I showed up with a little bit more power. I said hoorah in the beginning of the day, really strong, and I got attention in a different way. And so reading the context, knowing what's the style, that's the emotional self-awareness of being able to lead things forward, because there's always going to be different environments in which you might have to show up a little bit differently than, your nature leans. Mm-hmm. And that's the skill, I think, of learning that can be taught and coached and practiced as well. And then on the other side of it, there's a point you can't go beyond, because you have to be authentic. And if you're not leading with authenticity, then you're going to lose yourself as a person, and you won't be able to lead others. And so, yes, you want to be thinking about the context and what's going to be most effective, but you also want to not veer so far from your authentic self that you're faking it, you're playing a part, because it will come through. People
can tell authenticity from non-authenticity.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they fully understand what they're experiencing, but for sure. You can't fake it. Like, people will know. At least
Next
for
time I come on, I want to be completely coached by you. I think, can I come on again?
you want to be coached.
Yeah, I got lots of problems that I also want to get coaching on from.
Yeah, but you got a lot of wisdom you want to share with people. So that was my goal with you. And we went in a conversation here that I didn't anticipate at all. Like, the feminine masculine thing is very interesting. And I think that it stretches people to talk about this, but it's very important because it's this balance we all have within us that we carry, and one's more dominant than the other, and how to pull those strengths out at the right time, as you've said, are critical skills to be learning to be more effective, particularly as it relates to engaging with people or working with people. So just super valuable conversation here. Our time is up, though. And so, yes, you can come back. So you want to come back and you want to be the coaching guest.
Yeah, I've got questions. I want to see how Sean Griffin coaches me through some of our.
All right, we'll do that. Unfortunately, another person in Hanoi, Vietnam, we're going to have to bring back. So, because we couldn't hear her, but yes, more than happy to coach you anytime, my love.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. You were great. You were fantastic, as always. And I'm going to wrap this up. So we've had a day here today that's been interesting because we've talked about so many important pieces, and they may seem like they're not part of building a business or creating what you want in your life, but they're critical behaviors that we have. Number one, trust, being a more trusting person, working to be more trusting. Write it on a wall. I'm going to be more trusting. And then see how that changes your life and your dynamics as you go forward, because just being more trusting and starting with trust will get you far. I assure you. That doesn't mean stick with somebody you don't trust. Get the heck out of there as quick as possible when you find out there's no trust there, but lead with trust. The other thing we learned today that was really important is ideas and concepts of how to balance that feminine masculine side of ourselves, which are, again, critical components to showing up and engaging with people in different ways while being authentic in yourself. So this is another important kind of punchline, which is you got to be authentic, and people can tell when you're not authentic. I think you can tell here we're authentic, and all the people we've had on the show have been authentic, and we will continue to do that because we're bringing to you people who want to put a dent in the universe. PADITU is what we call it. All right, let me check this off here. Day 14. 2 weeks into this, and it gets more fun every day. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Same PADITU time, same PADITU place. Thank you very much.
You got to never, ever give up. Keep it up, never, ever give up. Keep it up, never, ever give up. Keep it up, never, ever give up.
Believe in yourself and you'll go far.